Good day, everyone. Trust you're doing well today. Today, we're talking about Dangote's $39 billion bet and if you should actually buy the IPO. Now, imagine waking up one morning and finding out that a single company in Nigeria is worth more than almost every company on the Nigeria Stock Exchange. Well, this new company is not a bank, it's not a telecom company, but a refinery. And not just any refinery, it's the Dangote Refinery. Now, here is the part that caught my attention. Before ordinary investors even get a chance to buy shares, big investors are already fighting to get in. Now, we are talking billions of dollars in demand. So, the question is, are we actually looking at one of the greatest investment opportunities in Nigeria history? Or are people getting carried away by, just the excitement of it? Today, we'll break it down, to see what's actually going on. Facts, incentive, the risk, and what will happen next. Because what is happening right now is bigger than an IPO. It's a game. And understanding this game could actually save you, your money or make you money. So let's begin. First, let's talk about what just happened. Recently, Aliko Dangote revealed that demand for its refineries, private placement had already crossed the $2 billion mark. Think about that for a second. The company had not even gone public yet, oh, and investors were already lining up with billions of dollars. That tells us something important. Now, the biggest investors in the room believe this refinery could become one of the most valuable companies in Africa. Okay, if you're wondering what a private placement is, don't worry, I got you, right? So it's actually very simple. Imagine a brand new luxury hotel is opening. Now, before the public get access, a few wealthy guests are allowed to reserve, the best rooms. That is basically what is happening here. The public listing comes later. The big money is trying to get in first. And whenever that happens, smart investors pay attention. And here is where things get really interesting because the refinery is being valued at around $40 billion. Some estimates even go higher. Now, let that sink in because $40 billion, many African countries don't have a single company worth that much. Some entire stock markets across Africa are smaller than that. So, why are investors, willing to put so much money into this company? The answer, starts with a problem Nigeria has had for decades. Quite frankly, right, we all know that Nigeria produces oil, right? Lot of oil. Everybody knows that. That's like general knowledge at this point. But for many years, Nigeria was exporting crude oil and then importing refined fuel back into the country. Think about how strange that sounds though. We sell the raw material, someone else processes it, then we buy the finished product back. That has been the reality for years and it created a massive business opportunity. Dangote looked at that situation and basically said, what if we build the refinery ourselves? That idea eventually became a Dangote refinery, a project so large that many people believed it would never be completed, because a lot of bottlenecks along the way. There were delays, there were cost overruns, there were, criticism, there were, doubt. But today, the refinery exists and it's operating. Now, that changes the conversation completely because now investors are no longer asking whether the refinery can be built. They are now asking how much money it can make. And that is where the real investment story begins. Now, the first reason investors are excited is scale. This refinery can process around 650,000 barrels of crude oil every single day. Now, that is actually very, very massive. In business, size does matter. All right. So, a large operation can potentially generate more revenue and spread cost over a bigger base. But then again, scale alone is not enough. The second reason is Nigeria itself. Nigeria has one of the largest population in Africa. Millions of people depend on fuel every day, cars, trucks, generators, factories, businesses. Fuel is deeply connected to economic activities. Investors see that demand and believe there is money to be made. The third reason is exports. A lot of people think this refinery is only about Nigeria. Well, it isn't because the refinery can sell products across Africa and beyond. That means revenue can come from multiple markets and that reduces dependence on one country. Then there is another factor investors love, foreign currency earnings. One of the biggest challenges many Nigeria companies face is access to dollars. But a refinery that exports products can earn foreign currency. That makes investors more comfortable because it creates another source of income. And then we have the expansion story. The current refinery is already huge, but there are plans for even more growth in the future. And investors are not buying today's earnings alone. They are buying what they believe the company could become, 10 years from now. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, this sounds amazing. And honestly, that's exactly why, we need to talk about this risk. Because this is where many investors make mistakes. A great company is not automatically a great investment. They are two different things entirely. Let me explain. Imagine somebody offers you a Toyota Corolla, great car, especially in Nigeria, reliable, proven, useful. Now imagine they ask you to pay 10 times its normal value. Suddenly it becomes a bad deal. Keep in mind, it's not because the car is bad, but because the price is just too high. The same thing happens with stocks. A wonderful company can still be a terrible investment if investors pay too much. And that is one of the biggest risks here, valuation. The second risk is crude oil supply. A refinery cannot operate without crude oil. That's very, very simple and basic. And one concern that has come up repeatedly is access to enough domestic crude supply. If the refinery has to keep importing large amounts of crude from elsewhere, costs can rise. And when costs rise, profits can fall. Then there is government policy. Whether we like it or not, oil and politics are deeply connected in Nigeria. Changes in regulations, changes in taxes, changes in foreign exchange policies, changes in energy policy, any of these can affect profitability, and investors know this. Another risk is refining margins. Most people think a refinery automatically makes more money when oil prices go up. That isn't necessarily true. What really matters is the difference between the cost of crude oil and the selling price of refined products. That gap is where profits come from. If the gap shrinks, profit shrinks too, regardless of if oil prices are high. And then there's this issue nobody really talks about, success itself. Some critics argue that the refinery could become too dominant. Supporters sees efficiency, critics see concentration of power, monopoly. That debate will probably continue for years. Now, let's talk about what could happen after the IPO. This is where things get fascinating. The most likely scenario is not what most people expect. Many people assume the stock will either explode upward forever or collapse immediately. Reality is usually somewhat in the middle. Now, here is what I think is more likely. The IPO attracts huge demand because right now everybody's talking about it. Most definitely, institutional investors will buy aggressively. Media attention will grow. Retail investors will rush in. The stock will perform, strongly at first. Then some early investors will begin to take profit. Then the stock will become volatile. Prices will swing. People will panic. People will celebrate. People will argue online. And eventually, the market will settle down and start valuing the company based on actual performance rather than the initial excitement. That pattern has happened many times in market history, which brings us to the most important question. Who actually has the advantage in this game? The answer is surprisingly simple. Dangote. Think about it. He controls one of the most important industrial assets in Nigeria. He has skill, he has infrastructure, he has influence, he has a business that sits at the center of energy, manufacturing, logistics, and exports. That is actually powerful, very, very powerful. The second group with an advantage is institutional investors. Why? Because they often get access before the crowd. They have analysts, they have research teams, they spend months studying opportunities before making decisions. Retail investors usually arrive much later. And that leads us to the biggest mistake ordinary investors make. They see a great story and assume it guarantees, great returns. But investing doesn't reward excitement. It rewards discipline. The question is not whether Dangote Refinery is impressive. It clearly is. The real question is whether future profits will justify the price investors are willing to pay for this IPO. This is the question that matters, and nobody knows the answer yet. Not me, not any analyst, not fund managers, nobody. What we do now is this. The refinery has already changed Nigeria industrial landscape. It has already attracted billions of dollars in investor interest. It has already become one of the most important business projects in Africa. Those facts are real. The rest is what the market will decide. So if you are watching this IPO closely, don't just ask whether the refinery is a good company. Ask a better question. At what price does it become a good investment? Because that one question could make all the difference. And honestly, that may end up being the most important financial question in Nigeria over the next few years. Now, what do you think? Will the Dangote refinery become one of the greatest wealth creation stories in Nigeria history? Or will investors eventually realize that expectations have become too high? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you gain value from this video, please like and subscribe so you do not miss my next video. All right. Have a nice day. Bye.